أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, before we begin today's event, we will have Hafiz Taha recite a few verses from Surah Nisa. And inshallah, those will be covered along with the program today, inshallah. So Hafiz Taha, whenever you're ready.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يوصيكم الله في أولادكم للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين فإن كن نساء فوق اثنتين فلهن ثلثا ما ترك وإن كانت واحدة فلها النصف ولأبويه لكل واحد منهما السدس مما ترك إن كان له ولد فإن لم يكن له ولد وورثه أبواه فلأمه الثلث فإن كان له إخوة فلأمه السدس من بعد وصية يوصي بها أو دين آباؤكم وأبناؤكم لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا فريضة من الله إن الله كان عليما حكيما ولكم نصف ما ترك أزواجكم إن لم يكن لهن ولد فإن كان لهن ولد فلكم الربع مما تركن من بعد وصية يوصين بها أو دين ولهن الربع مما تركتم إن لم يكن لكم ولد فإن كان لكم ولد فلهن الثمن مما تركتم من بعد وصية توصون بها أو دين وإن كان رجل يورث كلالة أو امرأة وله أخ أو أخت فلكل واحد منهما السدس فإن كانوا أكثر من ذلك فهم شركاء في الثلث من بعد وصية يوصى بها أو دين غير مضار وصية من الله والله عليم حليم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يستفتونك في النساء قل الله يفتيكم فيهن وما يتلى عليكم في الكتاب في اليتامى النساء اللاتي لا تؤتونهن ما كتب لهن وترغبون أن تنكحوهن والمستضعفين من الولدان وأن تقوموا لليتامى بالقسط وما تفعلوا من خير فإن الله كان به عليما صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khair. All praise belongs to Allah, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the master of the day of judgment, the only one worthy of worship. And we seek his mercy and ask for his forgiveness. And we ask Allah to send blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his house, his companions, and all the prophets that came before. Ameen. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan for being here. As you may know that this month's topic is about death and the afterlife and how we as Muslims have to prepare for our meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before our time is up. Last week we had a workshop about the process of preparing for a janazah, what to do in the event of someone's passing away. And inshallah today we will keep on with that tradition and discuss another aspect of that preparation. Inshallah, we will be joined by Sheikh Asim Kazi to learn about distributing inheritance, as well as learning about last wills and testaments according to the Islamic teachings. There are QR codes posted around the masjid for your convenience. You can scan them and ask any questions, and inshallah, at the end, we will have a Q&A session to address any questions that are asked, inshallah. So with that, I would like to welcome Sheikh Asim to the mic, inshallah, whenever we're ready. Sheikh Asim, he has studied under various scholars from different parts of the world and completed an Alamiya degree. For over 25 years, he has been involved in dawah activities, including giving khutbah and lectures in various Chicagoland masajid and universities. He has been involved in teaching at various levels, such as a teacher, advisor, principal, and is also a computer scientist and works as a test architect. Sheikh, Jazakallah for your time. We appreciate it, really do.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. And جزاكم الله خيرا for inviting me, giving me an opportunity to talk about a very important subject in Islam. This importance have been emphasized by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in many of the hadith, and we find many of the athar from different Sahaba as well, telling us about the importance of the knowledge in this field of inheritance. And of course, the Sheikh who just recited 3 of the verses from Surah An-Nisa, and these 3 verses basically covers, if not all, most of the shares, how they're supposed to be distributed among the inheritors. The way this talk is gonna go is, as the slide up there shows, these are the topics that will be covered in today's lecture. And I will not go too much into the calculation aspect of them, even though I will show some examples to get an idea of how the shares are calculated and distributed among the inheritors. And at the end, inshallah, I will also share a tool which basically makes the things much easier when it comes to calculating. But of course, it's always go back and make sure, double check what the tool is giving is correct. And I will highly recommend to go back to, if you understand the subject, good, you can do by yourself. If not, whatever tool that you use, the shares it calculates for you, make sure you double check with somebody who's knowledgeable in the subject as well. So if there is any error or something, inshallah, we'll rectify those errors in the tools. This tool is not mine. It's available. There are many tools are available online. You can also search, inshallah. Since most of the shares are through the Quran, directly defined by the Quran and the Hadith of Rasulullah and the Ijma' of the Sahaba, there are not many variations, even though some variations that we will see. Okay, now, let's start with that. When it comes to the importance of the knowledge of the inheritance, the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam reported by Ibn Majah in his Sunan, and it says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu an, قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أبو هريرة يا أبا هريرة تعلموا الفرائض. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Abu Hurairah that, O Abu Hurairah, learn about the inheritance. وعلموها فإنه نصف العلم. And for it is half of the knowledge. وهو ينسى وهو أول شيء ينتزع من أمتي. Rasulullah said that this is the first thing that will be taken away from my nation. Now, Scholars have discussed quite detail about this hadith itself, as is reported by Ibn Majah, rahimahullah. When it says the half of the knowledge, it can be taken in two different ways. One is, it's a way of emphasizing a subject, that the subject is important. So this is a way of emphasizing that learn about the subject. Second one says is, the other ahkam that we study, they're about while we are living. While when we talk about inheritance, this is about after you're gone. So it's what you have left behind, what to be done. So that's another way of looking at it. And Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh mentioned, he said, تَعَلَّمُوا الْفَرَائِضَ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ دِينِكُمْ. Then learn about the inheritance. It is from your deen. And similarly, there are many other reports that talk about that. And this hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is something that we probably hear that a lot during Friday khutbs. Yeah, a lot of time they mention this hadith, but it happened to be not the whole hadith. They will mention the part of it, but not the one specifically. Sometimes is skipped, or other reports were used. The one I'm talking about, the one that starts with Arham ummati bi ummati Abu Bakr. The one that says the most merciful of my ummah is Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh. Wa ashadduhum fi din. Din Allah Umar. And the one who is the most adherent or stern about the deen is Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh. And then it goes on about Uthman and Ali radiallahu anh, and then talk about Ubay bin Ka'b, his recitation. And then it talks about Mu'adh bin Jabal, and then after that says وَأَفْرَضَهُمْ Zayd ibn Thabit. Then it talks about the one who knows the most knowledge about أَفْرَضَهُمْ, talking about the faraid. This inheritance laws are also referred as something which are ilm al-faraid also. And faraid here is referring to inheritance, even though faraid is a plural or jama' of fard, which is obligation. But it's referring to specifically about inheritance. And Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anh, he was one of those Sahaba, that one who was expert in this field. There are different Sahaba who were at a different level for different fields within the deen as well. And this is a normal thing in any field we go in. Even in life affairs, in the sciences, not everybody is a scientist. For example, a physicist or chemist, or not everybody does everything, or computer scientist or engineer or doctor, or even any other field we take, or plumbing job. So there are different people who are experts in different fields. So within Islam, when you talk about the Sharia, there are many different fields within the Sharia, and there are different scholars who have excelled in different things. Among the Sahaba, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioning about Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu. Now, when it comes to inheritance, I'll start with this. This inheritance aspect starts with, when it comes to distribution of the inheritance, it has 4 parts. Number one thing that needs to be done is the funeral expenses. Number 2 is the debts that need to be paid. And I'll inshallah give an example of it that makes more sense. And the third thing, which is called will. Will is different than the inheritance. As a matter of fact, in the beginning, when the ahkam regarding the distribution of the inheritance were not revealed, at that time, Muslims were obliged to leave a will behind themselves. And after that, that part of the will, which is that a person, he can decide where the wealth can go besides the one Allah Azza wa Jal has already decided, that is up to 1/3 of your wealth that a person is allowed. This is a max. A person can say this can go to certain people, certain organization, masjid, or whatsoever he decides, but that specific will, a part of the wealth, cannot go to the one who already benefit from the inheritance. Okay? Same way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided the will for the inheritance for different inheritors. They cannot be decreased by anyone. So what Allah has decided has to be given to those people, the one who are inheriting from the deceased person. and they cannot take anything from the will. Okay, now the fourth thing, after all these three things in this order are done, this is the order of distribution of inheritance. Then it comes the distribution under the law of the inheritance, how you do that. So inshallah, I'll give a little explanation of each. That when it comes to the funeral expenses, this is the first step. And I think today there was a lecture on that subject as well, or was it last week?
There was one for the sisters.
Okay, so first thing is the funeral expenses. When somebody dies, the deceased wealth itself can be utilized. As a matter of fact, if this is the one that you will try to use. But of course, if the family members want to take care of it, that's a separate issue, and that's allowed as well. But it can be taken from the deceased wealth first. So first thing should be done is the funeral expenses, whether it's the kafan, whether or takfeen or tajheez, whichever one we're talking about. Now, second thing is funeral expenses when the deceased has no wealth. What do you do in that case? Third one, husband's obligation to pay for wife's funeral. And the fourth one is wife's responsibility towards the husband's burial. Okay. Now, when it comes to the taking from the wealth of the funeral, from the person who have died, from the deceased wealth. There's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that talks about a person passed away during performing in the Arafah. He passed away in the Arafah. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about him, اغسله بماء وسدر وكفنه في ثوبيه. That he says, wash him with water and sidr and shroud him in his two garments. That part itself is the one which points towards that this is the first thing that has to be taken care of when a person dies. So these expenses can be taken from the person who has died. So whatever clothing, kind of a clothing, for example, he used to wear, there should not be too much of an extravagant wealth to be utilized in the funeral processes. And at the same time, it should not be too stingy, that to the point that you are not taking care of the deceased properly. So the proper kafan and the burial should be provided to the person who passed away. Now, in the case when the deceased has no wealth, if the deceased has no wealth, in that case, the shrouding is a duty of the ones who's obliged to spend on him in regular life. So for example, children and wife are under the care of the man of the house. So if a child dies, so it's the father's obligation to take care of the deceased person if he does not have any wealth, or the wife, or the parents, whosoever it is. If they don't have the wealth, then the one who is supposed to be taking care of them must be taken care of. That's our obligation, falls on him now. Then there is, if there is no such person, then it must be done by Baytul Mal. And this is a term that we will be seeing quite a few times when it comes to the idea of inheritance. Because there is a fallback for many things in Islam in these kind of situations. It goes back to the Baytul Mal. See, it's not just a term Baytul Mal. Baytul Mal is organized by the state. The state that is running, implementing the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, implementing the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's part of it, to take care of a deceased person. If there is nobody for him, that it must be taken care through the wealth which is in the Baytul Mal, and this is up to the Amir al-Mu'mineen, how he is going to distribute the wealth for these kind of issues. Now, if there is no Baytul Mal, for example, or there is no wealth in Baytul Mal, then it is must be done by the Muslims also. So Muslims should get together and take care of, because this is part of one of the obligations which are referred as the one which is not Fardul Ain, but it's a Fardul Kifaya. Fardul Kifaya should be taken care by the Ummah. Okay? So the part of the Ummah should be participating and taking care of it. In the case of wife dies, husband, this is the obligation on the husband to take care of the shrouding and the burial and whatsoever is needed. And this is the view of Abu Hanifa, Shafi'i, and Malik, rahimahullah alayhim, and all of them agreed on that. Imam Ahmad said it must be paid for from her wealth. So again, it can be taken from her wealth, But the obligation lies because during the time when she was alive, she was under his care, and after she passes away, he will continue to be his responsibility to take care of her. Now, wife's responsibility towards the husband. Now, if the husband dies, as we know that wife is not obliged to take care of financial aspect of husband. This is not an obligation on her. It's the other way around. Husband is supposed to take care of the wife. So the same way the wife is not obliged for her husband's burial or any of those things. This is as Imam al-Kasani said, the wife is not obliged to shroud her husband according to consensus, ijma', just as she's not obliged to clothe him when he is alive. Now, if the wife takes care of these things, that is, there's a good deed from her side, a sadaqah from her side, that she is taking care of her husband's burial or kafan or these kind of things. Now, the second thing, after funeral expenses have been paid off, so we'll go back to the inheritance and see, okay, whatever wealth is left now, second thing should be, we look at the loans. Loans for who? We are just talking about deceased person when somebody dies. In the case of inheritance, our subject here is the deceased person, mayyit. Now, it has to be looked into that if he has any dain or not, any kind of a loan on him. And there's a hadith, many hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that talk about the subject, that says that عن سلمة بن الأكوع رضي الله عنه, he says أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أتي بجنازة ليصليها عليها فقال هل عليه من دين? When a janazah of a deceased person's body is brought to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would ask that does he have any loan on him, dain on him? And they would say قال لا فصلى عليه. If they say he doesn't have any loan on him, then Rasulullah would pray. But then ثم أتي بجنازة أخرى فقال عليه من دين. And if there is janazah came and Rasulullah would ask, does he have any dain on anyone? And if the answer was yes, then Rasulullah would say صلوا عليه صاحبكم, that pray on your sahib, on your companion. Meaning Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam pull himself out. Now the hadith goes on and says, Abu Qatada radiallahu anhu, he said, قال أبو قتادة علي دينه يا رسول الله, it's on me. Whatever he owed is on me. Meaning, Qatada in this case, he took the responsibility that he's going to pay it. فصلى عليه, then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed on him. And the reason I'm bringing this up are two. One, to understand the importance of paying back the dain. Any kind of a loan a person has, he must pay as soon as possible. Does that mean that it is not allowed or something? No, it's allowed. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he himself taken the loan. Now, in this case, it becomes more important for us to make sure that we get rid of our loans. That imagine you're living in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he could have prayed on your janazah. Dain is preventing Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to pray on you. Wouldn't you, every one of us would love that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam pray for us or pray on us. So it is that important of a deal to make sure the dain are paid. Similarly, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that يغفر لشهيد كل ذنب إلا الدين. For a shaheed, for a martyr, the one who dies in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all her sins are forgiven, except the dain, except the debt that he has on his neck. So it is important for us that to make sure that we are, if we are in a situation of taking the loans, make sure that we pay back. Similarly, the hadith Rasulullah says, nobody enters paradise likes to go back to the world, even if he got everything on the earth. Just talking about the shaheed, the one I just talked about. Shaheed has such a high status in Islam that he is one of those people, when he will enter into Jannah, he is the only one who would like to go back to world and come across the same way he was martyred and martyred again. And the hadith says 10 times, because of the dignity he receives from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this hadith is muttafaqun alayh. Muttafaqun alayh means this hadith is reported by both two of the most authentic books of the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Now, a side note is important for us to remember, and especially in some of the cultures, it is becoming more and more common that the dowry that the wife is supposed to get is not paid to her yet, or there is always thought of it as if this is not supposed to be paid. It's just in case you were gonna divorce. So it's like you're making a guarantee that a man does not divorce his wife. So this is not the case. The dowry is not like this, that in case of the divorce that you're supposed to pay. Dowry or a mahar, it must be paid. This is also like a dain. It's like a debt on your neck. Anybody who gets married has a mahar to pay. Try to pay as soon as possible, right away if you can. If not, if it's supposed to be delayed, that's fine, but pay as soon as possible. Okay? So it's also a debt. To think of it, connect this to even a shaheed. Even a shaheed. So it will be on his neck as well. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, one of the du'as he always used to make during the salah, and that was, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min adhab al-qabr. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to say, oh Allah, I seek refuge in thee from punishment in the grave. Wa a'udhu bika min fitnat al-masih al-dajjal. And from the fitna of the Dajjal. Wa a'udhu bika min fitnat al-mahya wa fitnat al-mamat. And the fitna of the life and the death. And then goes, and Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-mathami wal-maghram. And seek refuge from the sins and the maghram, which is the debts. It's such an important subject that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about that inna rajula idha gharima haddatha wa fakadhaba wa wa'ada fa akhlaf. The man, when a man is under his debt, he talks and he tells lies, make promises and break promises. And obviously, this does not apply to every person, but there can be tendency among the people when they are under debt. And many of us may know of examples around us. If somebody you have given the loan to, if you try to approach to them, and the date has passed and they're supposed to pay, you will find hundreds of excuses. But as a Muslim, we understand. It is on us. You get more hasanat when you give them more time to pay. So you are getting hasanat as if you have paid, you have given the sadaqah. But we are not talking about the person who have given the loan, rather we're talking about the one who is under debt now. So we understand that, make sure that we do not get into the situation because of debt. We end up getting into one of the kabair, lying or breaking promises. These are big sins, so we should be avoiding them. Now, the third thing first thing is funeral expenses, second is to pay the debts. The third should be paid is from the will that a person has made. So where is that will coming from? Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu an, he was sick. And he said to Rasulullah that I have wealth and no one to inherit from me except one daughter. This hadith talks about 2/3. I think I have the other one also. So other one talks about, first he said, I'd like to give all the wealth in charity. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that's too much. No. He said, what about 2/3? Rasulullah said, that's also too much. Don't. Then he said, half of it. And upon that, Rasulullah said, this is also too much. And then he said 1/3. Upon that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, yes, but that is a lot also. That is also considered as a, he said, وَثُلُثْ كَثِيرٌ. That the thuluth, the 1/3 that you want to give in charity, It is allowed, but it is a lot still. Hence, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu's opinion about this subject is, when he saw the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so he said about this, غضوا من الثلث إلى الربع لأن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الثلث كبير أو كثير. So he said غضوا means lower it. Lower it because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said 1/3 is a lot. So he said go by 1/4. Now this is Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. So Ibn Abbas' understanding, his opinion on the subject was that he's trying to say go lower that because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it is still a lot, but he allowed it. So he's trying to go taking a more conservative way or path, which is 1/4, but this is an opinion of Ibn Abbas. The hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is about 1/3, hence we stick with that. The max which is allowed is 1/3. So 1/3 can be given. Now, to whom it can be given, it's a longer discussion, and actually, as a matter of fact, this subject itself, I'll be wrong to say that I can cover the subject in 1 hour. Okay, it is quite a long subject, and it has a lot of details, and I will be trimming many of the things and will not go in every detail. Maybe if time permits me, and later on in the future, probably we can offer a class of 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours. I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but really have a deeper understanding of distribution of inheritance. So today we are kind of touching the tip of the iceberg here when we are talking about the inheritance. Now, so here this can be given for many, whoever you wish. Remember that, of course, for the halal things, but except it cannot be given to the people who are already inheriting from you. Allah has put the share for them. That share cannot be increased or decreased. Okay, so will cannot be given to them because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned. Now, let's take an example of it. And I made a mistake here. That's supposed to come at the end. Okay, but anyways, let's say you have an inheritance. So the order will be, somebody dies, he leaves some inheritance. First thing will be spent will be funeral expenses. Second will be debts. Third will be will. And the fourth, which is today's subject, distribution under the laws of inheritance. Okay? Take an example of somebody dies, he left 100,000 in inheritance. Let's say 10,000 was spent for the funeral expenses. The remaining inheritance now is 90,000. Out of the 90,000, person had the debt of 15,000. When you pay that off, now what's left is 75,000. After 75,000, person, let's say he left a will. Will is not a must, by the way. If a person did not leave that will specifically, that to be given to charity or specific people, then whatever is left after the debts and the takfeen is paid, then that can be inheritance and it will distribute under the Sharia laws. Now, let's say he has given deceased person, he or she, 1/3, which is a max from the inheritance. Then 1/3 of 75,000 will be 25,000. And the remaining is 50,000 inheritance. Now this 50,000 is going to be distributed among the inheritors. Okay? I want to stress one point. There is an order here. An order is important. You cannot start distributing first to the inheritors. You cannot take out 1/3 from 100,000. As you can see, if you take the 1/3 of 100,000, the will becomes what? Close to 333,300 whatever. Yeah? 1/3, which is more than 25,000 now. See my point? So it has to be in that order. Funeral expenses, then debts, and then you take the 1/3 out. And then after all that is done, these 3 steps are done, then you move to the 4th step of distributing between the inheritors. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Now, the distribution under the Sharia laws is one of the most important branches of Islamic knowledge, as I have talked in the beginning. The 3 verses that the Sheikh just recited. And subhanAllah, this is a miraculous aspect of the Quran itself also. You can write literally volumes of the books on the subject of inheritance. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned 3 verses. And 3 verses gives us for all sorts of distribution that we are looking for. Now, before those 3 verses of Surah An-Nisa that the Shaykh recited, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, prior to those rulings, which ayah was abrogated later on because of the ahkam was revealed, says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذَا حَضَرَ أَحَدَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ إِن تَرَكَ خَيْرَ الْوَصِيَّةُ لِلْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. The ayah says, it is prescribed for you when death approaches any of you. If he leaves wealth that makes a bequest, an inheritance, to parents and next of kin, according to reasonable manners, which is the bil ma'ruf. A duty upon al-muttaqun. This was an obligation. But this obligation was left for the person whose wealth is going to be left after he passes away. He was deciding at that time that wherever the wealth is supposed to go. So this was left for that. But this verse was abrogated when the ahkam of the wasiyah were revealed in Surah An-Nisa. The part which is left was, the max was 1/3. So that 1/3 can apply here, and that 1/3 again cannot be given to the people who are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already designated share in the inheritance. Okay. Now the verses that the Shaykh was reciting were like يُوصِيكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. Now, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you about the inheritance, that there are, if there's only 1 daughter or 2 or more, the share is 2/3 of the inheritance. If one, her share is 1/2, and for parents, a 1/6 share of inheritance to each of the deceased left children. If no children and the parents are the only heirs, the mother has a 1/3. If the deceased left brothers or sisters, the mother has 1/6. And then it goes on, the distribution in all cases is after the payment of legacies, which is the will, the debts and funeral expenses. Okay, so all that is paid, and then you go and start distributing. I will not go over each share here, because if I start going into the each share part here, we will be sitting here all night. And who are exactly the people who are inheriting? I will give a snapshot of those people and the sizes of the shares as well. Now, the last verse from Surah An-Nisa, so 11 and 12 covers about the children, the parents and grandparents, and also talk about the husband and the wife. When the wife dies, if there is no children, then husband's supposed to get the half of her wealth. If there are children, then he gets 1/4. On contrary to that, when it comes to the wife, if the husband dies, then the wife gets 1/4 if there are no children. If there are children, then the wife gets 1/8 of it. Now, one thing to remember here, when we are talking about these shares, and let me talk about the kalala also. The issue of the kalala is if there is nobody on there's no parents, grandparents, or somebody on the higher level, or there's nobody in the lower level also. When a person dies, then the wealth can be distributed to the siblings, brothers and the sisters. Now, we will see that there are places where men are given more share than the women. Like the sons are getting twice the share than the daughters. And even in the case of the husband and wife, and the wife is dying, husband is getting 1/4 or half, while the wife gets, if the husband dies, 1/8 or 1/4. And of course, that can be distributed further down if there are multiple wives. Now, we are not here to justify things from our mind, to say it is like this because of whatever reasoning that we can come up with. But we can see certain things in Islam that has to be understood, because to look at the hukum of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, outside the whole comprehensive system Allah has given to us, it may feel like there is injustice going on from a human mind, because we don't have comprehensive knowledge about the things. We fail to understand certain things. Allah is the one who has a comprehensive knowledge. And even when we look at the system, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obliged, like when we're talking about the deceased, if the wife dies, husband must be taking care of her burial and everything. But when the husband dies, the wife is not allowed, she's not supposed to. She doesn't have to. It's not an obligation on her. And wife is not obliged to take care of the husband or the children or any of those things, even if she works, even if she has her own wealth, even if she gains the wealth anytime. That wealth is hers. She's not responsible for any of those people. While on the other hand, whether it's the brother, whether it's the son, whether it's the husband or the father, whoever these people are, when they are male, they have obligations. And while we are seeing that, for example, there could be circumstances that one heir, even though getting a more share, he will end up taking care of the other ones who are female within the same inheritance, will be taking care of her, while she doesn't have to take care of the male relatives. So there is a lot of wisdom that we can see, but we should not be making and thinking of, oh, this is the illah, this is the reasoning behind the hukum. That's sufficient for a believer, that we find out this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided, this is what He has decreed, and that's sufficient for us. So we should be looking at all those shares that Allah has assigned, because this is from the hukum of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we take it as, we say, sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. And it's a mindset, we have to get into the mindset. If we are not in this proper mindset, it's very difficult to understand these things. If we are trying to reason everything, because the thing is, if we believe in Allah Azza wa Jal, Rabbu samawati wal ardi wa ma baynahuma, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rabb of the heavens and the earth and everything in between, and He's the creator of everything, He's all knowledgeable of everything. He is the one we believe in, and He gives us a command. All knowing, we understand He is al-adil, He is just. Then, if we start questioning, then first we have to really question our iman in Him. Do we really believe in Him? He is all knowing, all perfect, all just, all wise, and on and on and on. Hence, if we have the belief, then it becomes sami'na wa ata'na. But we have to make sure this is what Allah wants from us. That's the key thing. Okay. Now, when it comes to the shares, these shares, there are 6 different shares Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned. Those shares can be, of course, a whole thing can be, I'm not calling it a share if everything goes to one person. But share can be in a half, a quarter, 1/8, 2/3, 1/3, and 1/6. These are the ones which were mentioned in the verses that the Shaykh was reciting from Surah An-Nisa. Okay? Then, when it comes to the components of inheritance in Islam, so basically there are 3 things, right? One is the heirs, the one who is going to inherit, the one who died, and the estate or whatever inherited, the width that he has left behind. So these are the 3 things. What are the conditions for inheritance? Conditions of inheritance are 3 again. That first, when somebody died, the one we're calling them people are heir, they have to be alive at that time. Okay? And other thing is, they would be alive, they will come into this world as well. They can be considered that too. For example, husband dies, but the wife was pregnant. Now, if the child, she gives birth to a child later on, he or she will be heir from the wealth of the person who have died. Hence, it will be calculated in a manner that a wealth is being put aside with assumption of the max wealth. Meaning, it will be assumed that it's a boy, and if it happen to be a girl, then it will be taken away and distributed, but the max will be put on the side. That's one aspect of it. Sharia actually goes into more detail about if there is ambiguity in the sex organs even. In that case, also first it will be decided as a male or female. In Islam, you go by male and female. These are the only 2 sexes. Okay? Now, the inheritance will be distributed accordingly. Now, within that, these conditions, when you're talking about alive, I did not cover here, and I will, inshallah, some other time will cover, but I'd like to mention that because it's important nowadays, is becoming more for us to understand. When I'm saying the person has to be alive, it becomes problematic, isn't it? If you think of Gaza today, how many people are dying in one bomb strike? How do you tell who was alive, who's gone? And when a person died, who died first? You can't tell. So in those cases, these are special cases. And I'll tell you one thing. SubhanAllah, when I was studying this subject, by the way, it's a 1 semester course. It's not like a 1 hour course we will try to cover up here like this. But when I was taking that course, my sheikh, he was discussing certain things. And at that time, really did not click in my mind. It should have, but it did not for some reason. He was talking about, if people die at the same time, what does the Sharia say about those circumstances? How do you decide who will inherit for who? Because the thing is this, right? If a person dies and he leaves some inheritors below him or above him, and the wealth is not distributed yet, and then another person dies within the one who are going to be inheriting. So he's supposed to get the one. So we have to decide who died first, so that it will move in the right direction, and then from there further on it will be divided. Okay? So now think of when the Sheikh was talking about, he gave an example of, which kind of making sense, if the ship drowns. Then he was giving an example of whose body is found on top of the other, or first or second, and that kind of stuff, and then we will decide that, okay, he died first or he dies. And the other examples they gave us, okay, you can take two ways. One is both died at the same time, hence they may not inherit from each other. One is that. Other one is they both inherit from each other. Okay, so that's a complicated thing, but it's something to think about when we are discussing events like what's happening in Gaza for past 15, 16 months, or in Sudan, or happening in Kashmir. And that includes also people who are disappeared. You don't know, they know about whether they're even alive or not. Then how do you tell even if a person is gone? When did he die? Did he die, for example, a person disappeared today, and somebody dies, his father dies now. Now, what do you do now? You find out later on that he also died. You have to really tell who died first, father or the person who disappeared. So time of death is important here. And these kind of circumstances that as Ummah going through today, these are exceptional times that we are living in. The things that you assume to be exceptional, it's becoming a norm, unfortunately, for us. The issue of Gaza, for example. So this issue of exceptional case that we study, how many hundreds of thousands of people, they have to figure out who inherit from who and how much. So it becomes very difficult, but inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease the pain of the ummah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease the pain of the world at large. And the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the one who carries the message that can bring ease to not only Muslims but to the whole world at large, inshallah. Anyways, moving forward, second part is you have to make sure that the person who died he's dead. Okay, so he's regarded as a deceased person. And the third one is knowing who may inherit, the reason why he's entitled to inherit, to inherit, and things like that. Okay, so these are three conditions for inheritance. How much time do I have?
You have time.
I have time?
You have time.
Okay.
Aisha's at 7, so.
Okay, so I have
We
time.
want to get some question answering, but
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I give enough examples also, so people get an idea. Then the causes of entitlement to inheritance is, of course, the aqad is one thing, when you get married. Second is the wala, which is if somebody had been free, or a slave had been freed. And the third one is the nasab, the blood ties. These are the three things that causes the entitlement to the inheritance. There are things that make you which is called mani', which is the impediment. It becomes an impediment for a person to inherit. What are those? If a person becomes a slave now, slave cannot inherit anything. If a person kills somebody from whom he can inherit, so a killer cannot inherit in Islam. If a killer kills, for example, a son goes and kills his father. If established that he is the one who killed the father, son cannot inherit, even though he was an inheritor. But this act of killing becomes a mani', impediment to prevent something to be taken. Okay. And the third one is the difference of religion, deen. In Islam, a kafir cannot inherit from a Muslim, and Muslim cannot inherit from the kafir. And this is an important thing, especially living in a society where there is quite a big population who are not Muslim, and there are people who are entering into fold of Islam. So entering into fold of Islam creates a situation where you can have family members who are not Muslim, or a person who marries somebody from Ahl Kitab, for example, so she's not a Muslimah. In that case, if there's a difference of religion, so a Muslim do not inherit from a kafir does not inherit from the Muslim. Okay? Like the hadith of Rasulullah said, لا يرث المسلم الكافر ولا الكافر المسلم. That Rasulullah said, a Muslim may not inherit from a non-believer, and non-believer would not inherit from a Muslim. And this hadith is muttafaqun alayh, reported by both Bukhari and Muslim. Similar hadith, a little bit different wordings, that reported by Bukhari separately as well. Now, in general, the categories of heirs, or from the men, there are 15 different categories within the men. As I said, this is not the time I'm going to go spend too much, because inshallah, as I said, it's other, if somebody wants to take a snapshot or something, you can do it, or the video will be on anyways, so you can take a snapshot from there. So these are the 15 categories among the men who inherit, or are the heirs. Son, son of a son, and then it can go on further down the line. Son of a son of a son of a son, and on and on and on. A father and the paternal grandfather, no matter how far you want to go. Grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, whoever is alive. And then the full brother, which is called the haqiqi. Haqiqi means you share both mother and father. If you only share, if the half-brother only share father, is allati. And if you share mother only, then it's akhyafi. So these are 3 different kinds of brothers you can have. Same way you can have 3 different types of sisters as well. Haqiqi, allati, and akhyafi, which is maternal, paternal, and full, which is maternal, half brother from mother side, half brother or sister from mother side, half brother or sister from the father side, or full brother or sister. So there are 3 different categories for each. Okay, then you have paternal uncle, paternal half uncle, the son of a paternal full uncle, half uncle, and of course the husband and the freed male slave as well. Now, similarly, we have for the women there are 10. Okay, daughter, son's daughter, no matter how far her father lines goes, and mother, maternal grandmother. By the way, one thing is about when talk about grandfather. Grandfather is only from the father side. From the mother side, grandfather does not inherit. Why? As I said, this is all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained. And we stick with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained. Okay, grandmother from the mother side, she inherits. But the grandfather from the mother side does not inherit. Okay. So from the women's side, maternal grandmother, paternal grandmother, full sister, half sister, from father side, mother side, wife, and the freed female slave as well. Now, the categories are, which is the Dhawil Furud, these are the ones specifically assigned shares from the Quran and the Sunnah. And then if there is something is left, that goes to the Asba. From the Dhawil Furud, the one who have shares have been defined, and after those shares have been distributed, there is still some wealth left. Then it goes to Asba, and then asba goes back to the ones who are inherited and gets distributed according to the way they were getting it. Okay? Inshallah, as I said, more details can be discussed later, but at least we'll get some taste of it today. Okay. Then third one is with no asba and none qualifies for excess wealth, then it's called rad. Rad means return back. So this wealth, which is the extra, is there, that also goes back to the zawil fruit and that will be distributed according to the percentages that they received first. And if somebody does not have any kind of inheritors, again, see this says Baytul Mal. Now the wealth goes back to Baytul Mal again. See, we are living in the time and the era, we don't even comprehend this idea of Baytul Mal. That shows that even our basic things, of even our own wealth sometime, whether the one that's gonna go or whether we are in need of the wealth from there, that does not even exist. And for that, you need a sincere state that is implementing the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that takes care of these things as well. Okay? Now, I'm going to give an example here. If a man dies and he has a father, and this example, I will take the same example and use different permutations. It goes by the verse which is Surah An-Nisa was recited, and that says Allah commands you as regard to your children, to the male a portion equal to that of two females. If there are only one daughter, two or more, their share is 2/3 of the inheritance. If only one, her share is a half. For parents, 1/6 share of the inheritance to each if the deceased left children. Okay, that's just the rules I have mentioned. Now, how does it apply? Let's see. So let's say if there is a household, and we are talking about the person who's going to die in this household is the husband. His husband has a father, a live father. Wife has a father also. And then they have 2 sons and 1 daughter. Throughout these examples, when you see the blue picture, that's a male, pink one or the red, whatever the color is, I'm going colorblind, that's a female. And the gray, male or female, means that's the person who was the deceased or the dead person. So in this example, we are saying husband is the one who died. If that's the case, so husband dies, as you can see, so it becomes gray. Then, as the verse was saying, 1/6 is assigned for the father of the men who died. Okay? And 1/8 goes to the wife because they have children. If they did not have children, she would have gotten 1/4. And whatever is left now, the choice of those shares, so a daughter will be getting 1, and each son will be getting the two shares. So in this case, when we look at it, 6 and 8. So to make a little bit of a math is needed here. But nowadays tools are available. They have taken care of most of the stuff. But if you want to do it by hand also, we can do that. That's what I'm trying to show you here. So we need to find the least common multiple here of what? 6, 8. And among these 2 sons and a daughter, it's supposed to be 2 shares for the sons and 1 for the daughter. So it becomes 5 shares. So when you take the LCM or the least common multiple of 6, 8, and 5, that gives you 120. So you basically take the whole share, whatever it is, house, car, the gold, money, whatever is left, you put them together and you say, okay, that's the amount you have. Remember the first example I was giving? I was saying the 100,000 you started with, 10,000 went for the funeral, 15,000 went to the debts, 25,000 went to the will. So left was 50,000. So I'm keeping that 50,000 now, and we are distributing among this inheritance. Okay? So from that example, what we see here is, so I made a mistake. This was supposed to come at the end to show, but it's all good. So 20 shares, because out of 120, 1/6 of 120 will be given to the father of the man who died. So it becomes 20 shares out of 120. Sorry. And wife is supposed to go 1/8. So 1/8 of 120 is 15 shares. then the son gets 34 shares out of 12, because what left is 15 plus 20 is 35. When you subtract 35 out of 120, you're left with 85. So now this 85 has to be divided into 5 shares, right? Two go to each son, and 1 goes to daughter. So those 5 shares are made up of 17 each. So the daughter gets first son gets 34 out of 120, second gets 34 out of 120, and the daughter gets 17 out of 120. And if you can add them all together, it will become 120 again. So now, you see the table on the right side that says that 1/8 means basically 12.5%, or 20 over 120 is the 12.5% of the shares, which is, when you apply that to 50,000, and there will be a few dollars here and there because of I did not really take care of the decimal points here, but 6,250 goes to the wife. And when you look at the sons, the first sons get 28.34%, which is 14,170, and the second son gets the same amount. Daughter gets a half of the sons or the brothers, which is 7,085, and the father gets 2/12 or 1/6, sorry. So it becomes 8,335. Okay, so that's one example. Now move on to we keep the same thing, somebody else will die now in the family. Okay? So you have husband and the father alive, wife's father is alive, and there are 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. Now in this case, wife dies. Again, we are starting with the 50,000. Wife dies, so 1/6 goes to the wife's father, not the husband's father. Husband's father does not inherit anything. Husband gets 1/4. Why? Because they have children. If they did not have children, they would have gotten how much? Anybody remember? Half, right? But because they have children, it's 1/4. Okay. Now son gets, again remember, son gets twice of what the daughters gets from the remaining share. Now in this case again, situation is, this one is, we have 4 shares for the husband, 6 for the father, and there are 5 shares for the sons and the daughter. So we have to find the LCM of 4, 6, and 5, least common multiple, which is 60 now. So now when you do 60, it becomes easier to give complete shares to the people. Okay? It doesn't have to be like this. If somebody is more comfortable with the percentages, you can do with the percentages and we're good to go. Okay? So 1/4 for the husband is the 25% of the wealth basically, which is 12,500 from the 50,000. Son gets 23.34%, which is 11,670. Second son gets the same, and the daughter gets a half of the son's share, and the father gets 1/6, which is 8,335. Okay. Similarly, okay, so these are the shares. Now, in this case, the daughter dies. If the daughter dies, so they automatically you have a mother and now the grandmother and grandfather. Grandmother is dead already. Now you have siblings also. So it is giving different examples now. So now if I go, so father gets 5/6 and the mother gets 1/6. See, remember, brothers are only getting in the circumstances where there is no father is there, for example, or there's no asba left. But in this case, father is there, so after he's getting 1/6, he gets the rest of the asba money also, which is the remaining. So father gets 5/6, and brothers and grandfather do not get anything, any share. Whether from the mother side does not get anyways, or on the father side will not get either. And hence, father will get 83.33% of the share, which is 41,665, and mother gets 1/6, which is 8,335 out of 50,000. Now, in the case of, sorry, yeah, it's kind of messed up a little bit. It's a last minute thing. If the son dies, in this case, if this son died, so father will get 5/6 and mother will get 1/6, and nobody else would get anything else again. Okay, so in this case, it will be the same thing. Son or father, girl dies, the sister dies or son dies, whichever one dies, doesn't matter. Okay, now in this case, if the grandfather dies, how does the wealth distribute? And this is the grandfather of the father, of the man. In this case, or the husband in this case, so in this case he's a son now, but the son has a grandson, 2 grandsons, 1 granddaughter. And because grandfather has a son, the wealth will not go to the next level. It will just get distributed there. Okay? And if he has multiple sons, he will get multiple sons. But I'm just giving it for the sake of example. It's just 1 son, so keep it as 1 son. Okay, so in this case, all the wealth will go to the father. Now, I have a tool here, and inshallah, that can help a lot. The very same things that I was talking about. There's some brothers and or the sisters who have worked on this. They have taken care of this. There's many other tools as well. And if we plug in the same numbers, for example, for the sake of example, I'm giving you one here, inshallah, then we'll move on to Q&A as well. So if there is a husband, he dies, for example, and he leaves 1 wife, as I was showing you, and he leaves 2 sons, 1 daughter, and he leaves a father also alive, right? So this is the example we had, one of the examples, and if you just calculate, and it will tell you, the wife gets 1/8, son gets 17 of 60 part. The reason it's saying 70 of 60, in reality, it was supposed to be, as I said, 30 of 60, and then it's divided among the 2. So it becomes 34 of 60, 34 of 120, actually. Okay? So percentages are same. Inshallah, this tool is pretty useful. Somebody wants to use the tool and check it out, how it calculates, and it will help you, inshallah, as well. And I think that's all I had. There are some books mentioned here. If somebody's interested in looking for the books are available. And if there's any questions, inshallah, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Jazakallah khair. You really got us with the math at the end. I'm sure everybody was prepared for that. But khair, we're going to go through these questions, inshallah. We have about roughly less than 20 minutes till Isha. So the first question we have is saying, regarding fidya of the deceased for salah and fasting, how should it be handled? And then should it be given from their wealth before the division of inheritance? Also, in the Islamic system, are there any taxes or such applied on the inheritance amount from the government? Who ensures a correct division of inheritance, government or family?
So fidya, as one of the hadith Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam talks about, a sahabi came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he asked if he should perform some of the actions on the behalf that was due on the father. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, once you have paid the dain that was on his neck, which is the loan or the debt on him. So it will be considered as the dain. But the family members, of course, can take care of as well.
Okay. So the next question is, can a wife forgive her husband if he does not pay her dowry and he passes away?
Absolutely. I mean, anybody can forgive, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward her for the action like that you are taking the burden off of the neck of somebody, whether it's your husband, of course. And it is, as I said, a mahar or a dowry is considered as a debt on your neck. So yes, my wife can do that. Wife can do that when he's alive as well. He doesn't have to wait for him to die. If she wants to forgive, she can forgive when he's alive as well.
Jazakallah. So the next question is, if a parent has a business and only has one child, can you pass it down to the child with or without it being split up?
If the parents have a business, see again, one thing to understand here is, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has decreed the shares. We should not be thinking of that we can come up with better system of division of the wealth than what Allah has decreed. We may see some benefits here and there. For example, before I give direct answer for the question you're asking, because there's a lot of things that I want to cover but I did not here. People see that they can have children who have different needs also. For example, some of them can be children who may need, for example, they need some special care compared to the others. Now, it should be taking care of them while they're alive. While they're alive, in general, you take care of the children equally, by the way. Male, female, doesn't matter. When we're talking about the wealth distribution, that male is getting the double, then the son is getting double than the daughter, that's only because of the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded about the inheritance aspect. When it comes to life, you take care of your children equally. Now, some of them may require more than the others because this is the way Allah has created them. In those cases, you take care of them in this dunya, now when you are alive. And you can give whatever you want within your children when you're alive. See, the inheritance is not talking about what you give to your children or your parents when you are alive. So you can take care of that whichever way, the halal way Allah has allowed us to do that. Now about the business part, if there is one business and it needs to be distributed, or is it better that to give the whole business to one child than to be split into multiple? So this is something that at the end, the shares is defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So hence the share has to be given now. One child can buy off the other shares if he wants to, or the others can, if they would like to, give it to them, give it to one child because this is their brother and they want to give their own share to him, for example. That's a separate issue. That's between them. But we cannot go ahead and say, no, because for the integrity of the business, we are not going to divide the business wealth or something. We're going to keep it to one person, even though it becomes unjust for others. So it has to be divided. If it becomes this way, that there is more wealth than one business, then one share can cover, for example, a whole business. That's a different story, though. Then you can give that specific share, which is a business, to one person or two people, whichever way you like.
And his next question is, in the West, many Muslims have loans bigger than them, as in like owning a house or a car. What do you do in the event that the inheritance does not satisfy the debt?
Well, he has the debt, which he has to pay. If he does not pay, first of all, as I said, it goes in that order. Whatever wealth he is leaving behind, it has to be first used on your funeral expenses, then the debts, then the will, then distribution, which means if a person has a house, let's say the house is $500,000, and he has paid off $200,000. And by the way, when I'm saying this, I'm assuming it's the halal way of a person has a halal loan. I am not promoting by any means that talking about the riba-based loans or something a person has. That's a haram thing anyways. A person should get out of it as soon as possible and do a favor on the deceased person's soul also, that get rid of these kind of things and pay off whatever can be paid off. Now here, going back to the subject. If a person has the loans for the house, for example, in many cases, there is some equity already on the house as well. So now, in reality, that house, which is for $500,000, you have paid $200,000, so you owe $300,000, does not mean that there is no wealth here. So that house can be sold for whatever $500,000 or $600,000 the value is now. You pay off the loans, and the rest of the money should be distributed among the people. Now, if you're talking about everything is just a loan, then the person has a loan on his neck, has to be paid off, or you have to get rid of these kind of dealings.
So another question is, can you deny the inheritance just to avoid the headache?
Denying, I'm not sure what it means, but if a person says that give up his own share to somebody, that's like you're giving your share, say, I'm giving my share to, let's say, my brother or my mother or my sister. That's a separate issue. You can only give up your share in that case. You cannot say, I want to make sure everybody give up his share and give to one person. You cannot dictate others because you don't know the needs of the other people. See, sometimes it could be like this. You can have 4 brothers and sisters or whatever number of brothers and sisters. You could have 3 of them are well off. They don't care about the wealth that they can inherit from their father. But the 4th one might be in need. So you cannot just say, no, we're all going to give up our wealth. And we should not be putting people in the circumstances that they give up something out of shyness or something that belong to them, okay? And other aspect of this inheritance aspect to be understood is inheritance should be distributed as soon as possible. And we are living in a time and era where people have not distributed the wealth from generations now. 2, 3, 4 generations have gone, and many people have died in between. So it is becoming more and more complicated. And not only that, it becomes unjust for many people. There are people within the family who are in need, and they are not getting their shares. And when Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked the questions, I missed that part of the hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that do not leave your family in a way that they're begging later on. They're asking for the wealth. Leave them with khair. Leave them with wealth. So its goal should not be that when I die, I'll get rid of the wealth and give in charity and have a sadaqah jariyah. No, use it when you are feeding your family. That's a sadaqah too. Use that sadaqah now. Don't wait for the death. So it has to be used, and make sure that we are leaving our family in a good standing, if we can, of course. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, use it in this life as well when you are alive. You don't have to wait to die.
So this next question is, what if you have loans from when you weren't Muslim? Loans or debts, I would assume, for when you weren't Muslim.
Loans are, this is an aqd, that you have made an agreement, a contract when you took the loan, whether you were a Muslim or non-Muslim. Awfu bil uqud, that you have to fulfill your contracts. Now, question can be whether that aqd was valid or not, meaning from the perspective of there is some haram involved, there is some riba involved or something. You owe the one which is the principal amount that has to be paid off if that was taken. We can talk about this later. Have some very specific question about that. I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but in a simple manner, before Islam or after Islam, it's an aqd. It's a contract that you made. You have to fulfill the contract that you have signed up.
So this next question is, what about if the inheritance is from haram money or have haram money in it? Is it still permissible to inherit from it?
I would suggest look into specifics of that when we're saying haram money. Obviously, if haram money is stolen money, that's not the person's wealth anymore. In reality, it's not his wealth. So you cannot inherit stolen money, for example. But there is certain ways of a person has acquired the wealth by doing certain work or something. About that, the fuqaha, you will find the differences. Some of them say that for the person on the receiving end, as long as it was under the possession, legal possession is his ownership, he can inherit. Other scholars differ in the different types of wealth have been accumulated, whether that kind of wealth even can be taken or not. So there's a ikhtilaf about this issue, but one of them says, and it depends on how and what specific haram we are discussing. So it will be dependent on more detail.
This person said, are these guidelines specific for a given madhab?
In general, it was Hanafi madhab when it comes to this, but as I said, I mentioned some of the other scholarly opinions also. The ones I mentioned were pretty much all, there was not really much of a madhab was mentioned. It's more common laws, but in general, my study about the subject was more from the Hanafi perspective.
This one is, can an adopted child inherit?
Okay, so adopted child in Islam, when we adopt a child, it does not become your child. I want to make sure we understand that. We're not saying that we should not take care of the orphans, for example, or a child in need, and you are taking care of them. Alhamdulillah, this is a great reward for taking care of the orphans, but it does not become your child. Hence, he or she cannot inherit from you because he is not really your child. So now what can you do for that kind of circumstances, for example? This is where it comes in, the 1/3 will can be utilized for that as well, because he's not an inheritor from you. Similarly, you can have circumstances that, let's say you are in a non-Muslim, you became a Muslim. Now, you have children who did not become Muslim, for example. Now, in that case, your children are not going to inherit from you, Sharan. But you can give from the 1/3 that you have control over, just to take care of them, maybe that will become a source of guidance for the children as well. So these are the circumstances where the 1/3 can be utilized. Besides, of course, it's always you thought of it as sadaqah jariyah, as give it to the masjid, give it to this organization and all that. Yes, you can do all these things. But on top of it, it can be utilized for that. You can be utilized for your family members who would not inherit from you otherwise. So they can be given to that as well.
Good, Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. That was a very lengthy Q&A, which I expected, and then alhamdulillah, that was very informative. So, and as you can see, there's many more questions that we have, but inshallah, we just don't have the time. But I just want to make a final announcement that next week, Saturday, January 25th, we will have a conference called Gardens under which rivers flow. Inshallah, we'll begin at 3, and Sheikh Asim will be back then, inshallah. We invite all of you to join us and take advantage of the free knowledge, and you feel free to ask any more questions then as well. With that, Sheikh, if you could just end us with a dua, we would really appreciate it. Jazakallah khair.
Before the dua, I just want to remind you one more thing though. I did give out one of the documents to Brother Zain here, and the document has option of us to, if somebody wants to write a will, you just need 2 witnesses in that. Basically, you can calculate with your numbers that you come up with as a tool that I pointed out. And then have 2 witnesses, and I believe you need to have the notarization, the 2 witnesses, to make it a legal document here. You don't necessarily require a lawyer or anybody, but if you do have a lawyer that you can utilize and you have like to give some money to the lawyers, that's fine. But as far as I understand, that's sufficient for you to have 2 Muslim witnesses when you are getting it notarized somewhere, and it becomes a notarized document. Only thing is, you may have to update the document in the case of changes. I'm not sure if you can write just a sentence like that if a person, any of the person who is within that document dies before I die, then the shares will be distributed this way. But you can always have it updated, inshallah. But that's a way, one of the ways to do it, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us the wisdom, give us the knowledge about all the affairs of our life in this dunya, and when we pass away, to have the wealth to be distributed the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieve the pain of the ummah, especially the brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Sham, in Syria, in Sudan, in Yemen, in Kashmir, and all around the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring Islam back the way it's supposed to be by implementation of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.